chatting to you about the way you perceive breast cancers. Most people automatically look for a lump, and there's so many other things to look for. You don't always feel a lump. It can be dappling, it can be inverted nipples, it can be leakage.
What's dappling? Did you just say dappling?
So that means the skin puckers.
Oh, right.
Okay, so you'll see a puckering on the skin.
Okay.
That can mean that there's a lump underneath somewhere. Some lumps sit really very deeply. So that's the reason I'm saying to you, please don't be scared to touch the breasts, because you might not always find a lump. The best way to check your breasts is this, is that you stand in front of the mirror once a month, around about the same time every month. If you do that, it's going to be the same cycle, so you'll get used to because your breasts do change during your menstrual cycle and everything like that. So choose a time and then try to do it every month. What we tend to ask people to do now is just set a little reminder on their phones. It's so easy, and just say breast check. When you're checking your breasts, as I've just been explaining to you again, a lot of people talk about doing it in the shower and things like that. That's great. Any time you check your breast just for lumps and things like that, or any differences, it's fantastic. But the best way to do a breast exam is to lay flat on your back so that your head's not supported either. The way to do it is slide down the bed, get rid of the pillow, slide down the bed and lay flat. To check your right breast, you put your left breast, you put your left arm behind your back. That tightens everything. People often go, why do you do that? It just tightens everything up. And then you use these fingers. You will see a lot of people fiddling around and doing that. You just need your fingertips, they're the most sensitive part. And all you will do is just gentle little round movements, even into your armpits as well. And just check for any slight. Now, during the menstrual cycle, we do get lumps and bumps. You will know the difference. Even if you are not sure that it's just a normal thing, consult a doctor. The quicker you get a breast lump, so much easier. The longer you leave it, the longer it has time to grow and to get into places where you really don't want it to be. So early detection is really important, as you see from those things out there. I literally found mine by bending over. I was untying my trainers. Sorry I'm in trainers today, I wouldn't normally come dressed like this, but I've got rheumatism in my foot at the moment, which is particularly painful. But I just bent over for the trainers, and as I did, I didn't get pain, it was just like an uncomfortable sensation there. And I thought, must check that, because my mum had 4 girls, and she taught us all from a very young age how to check our breasts. So it's really important. I forgot, and 2 days later I was laying in bed with a cup of tea and thought, oh, I didn't check my breast, I must do that. Immediately did that, felt it straight away. The place that I went to, lump. So doctors, tests, and it was breast cancer. But because I caught it really early, I was one of the lucky ones. I had a lumpectomy and just radiotherapy. I didn't have to go down the chemotherapy route. So early detection, especially if you guys have got children, nieces, anything like that. So many people are scared to pass it on to their kids. And we were lucky that we had a really forward-thinking mum, because I'm 60 next month. And my mum, if you think about that, was teaching us that in the early 60s. So it's really, really unusual. As I say, the earlier that you get it, the better. So don't be afraid of it. So many people are afraid, and then when they do find their lump, they will just leave it. So I promise you, it's going to be a lot worse for you if you leave it. I'm obviously a coward, because I was so scared I went round that day, and that's the best way to deal with it. I want to tell you a little bit about breast cancer care and how important these events are, because as I say, thank you so much. A lot of people go, oh, it's only £100 or it's only £200. We are a tiny charity in comparison to, things like cancer research. We are minuscule. Cancer research is huge. We are tiny, so anything that we get is really, really important. Breast cancer care was started just over 50 years ago by a lady called Betty Westgate, who actually sat in her doctor's office and was told, Mrs. Westgate, you've got breast cancer. To which she replied, oh, okay, so what do we do now? What happens? And the doctor looked at her and said, why do you want to know? And that was the attitude that you got 50, 60 years ago from doctors. As far as they were concerned, this was their problem, not yours, and they would deal with it. And during her treatment, she actually had a doctor say, do you know what, some of the women last like for 3 to 5 years now, this is amazing. So for her, for Betty, that was a death sentence. In 3 to 5 years, she was going to be gone. So she learnt as much as she could about breast cancer. She lived in Croydon. She opened up an office in her house, and she would travel all over the country, even if it was just to see one person. And eventually, in the 70s, she managed to start an official charity called the Mastectomy Association, which is now breast cancer care. And what we do is so important, and I can tell you this from somebody that's been diagnosed, is when a doctor sits there and says you've got breast cancer, you don't leave that hospital and go, thank God there's somebody in a little lab somewhere in a white coat going to find the cure. Because that's not what you're thinking about. You're thinking about, oh my God, who's going to help me? So, and even I thought that, and I've got 3 sisters. All my sisters, every one of them took it differently. So when I called the eldest one, my youngest sister was with me at my diagnosis, and she said, bring the girls. So I started with the eldest one, and I went, hey Kane. So she went, what happened? I said, I've got breast cancer. And she said, okay, I'll pass you to Ruth, who is her partner. And I went, what? You know, I was expecting at least, you know, some sort of normal reaction, which I would consider normal, but that was how she dealt with it. Then the other one, I rang her and I said, Jack, I've got breast cancer. She went, oh my God! You know, and the youngest one went, it's all fine. We deal with this and it's all fine. So within one family, you've got that huge variation of reaction. So people will react differently. It's difficult to go up to somebody you love and say, this is how I feel today. Because you're constantly feeling like that for a long time, the uncertainty of what's going to happen to you. So I didn't bother them. Just before I went in for my lumpectomy, I had a file that was given to me at diagnosis, which I had a look at. And it was from an organisation called Breast Cancer Care, who I'd never heard of. I had no reason to know about breast cancer care. I didn't know anyone that had breast cancer at that point. And what they did, they gave me so much information and support that it just completely calmed me down before I had my operation. So I decided to do one fundraiser for them, and 11 years later, and £180,000 later, I'm still doing it. And I'll tell you what made me do it, is that as I was waiting to see if it had gone in my lymph nodes, I was waiting outside my doctor's office and I heard somebody, which I can only describe as a howl. And as the door opened, out came a lady, probably a little bit older than me, sobbing, absolutely sobbing. And I looked at my sister and I went, poor lady's just been diagnosed with breast cancer. And as I looked up, a young girl came out who was in her 20s. And she had the folder that I'd held in my hands 2 weeks previously. And they left the doctor's room, and I looked at my breast care nurse and said, was it the young lady that was diagnosed? She said, yeah, she's 24, and that was her mum. And it's the first time since my mum had passed that I was glad that she wasn't around, because I wouldn't want my mum to have seen me get diagnosed. Because it's really, really difficult. It is extremely difficult for everybody that loves you and cares about you. And seeing that girl, I literally sat, I had to go for some more blood tests, and I sat there and I said to my sister, I've got to do something. I've got to do something. So I set out to do one thing, as I said, and 11 years later I'm still doing it, and I'm standing here before you now to say, Rebecca, thank you so much for inviting me along, and for you guys for doing it. You will never know, honestly, you will never know what it achieves and who it helps. We've lost a few people this year. Sorry. I always try not to do this. We lost a really, really beautiful lady this year who fought for 10 years with breast cancer. It's still quite raw for all of us because she was amazing. So thank you so much. It's so special. And I wish I could eat cake. Thank you.
Thank you.